Welcome to POUSE Around the House. In this video I'm going to show you how to fit a ceiling light. I'll show you how to wire in a ceiling light from scratch if you don't have a light in the room in the first place. I'm going to give you some simple wiring diagrams to help you with your installation, and I'll show you how to replace the wiring in the ceiling rows like this one, using a couple of my favourite junction boxes and connectors to enable you to replace your plastic light fitting with a modern metal light fitting like this, or this, and have it safely earthed. In a lighting circuit, we use what's known as a radial circuit. This simply means we only use one length of cable, and this length of cable doesn't return back to the consumer unit. So going from the fuse in your consumer unit, the cable comes out into the first light fitting in your first room, goes down into the light fitting, and then a cable comes back out of the light fitting, on across into the next room, and back into the next light fitting, and so on. You can see I've now added the switch cable, and in each room you will usually see 3 cables, one in, one back out, and one go into your switch, which returns the switch live to the bulb. But when you come to your last light in the circuit, you will only have the cable coming in and your switch cable going out, so there will only be 2 cables. That's how you'll know that's the last light in your circuit. Lighting circuits in a domestic property are protected by a 6 amp MCB, otherwise known as a miniature circuit breaker. When doing a lighting circuit, we use 1.5mm twin and earth cable. Think of these grey bands as one individual length of cable with the live, the earth and the neutral within it. Then starting at our consumer unit, we have our one length of cable. It runs up the wall, through the ceiling and into the room where your light fitting is. And in this room we have our ceiling rows, and these connector blocks resemble what is inside your ceiling rows. So we have 3 terminals for the neutral, 3 terminals for the loop, 2 terminals for the line, and we have 1 terminal for the earth where we connect all the earth cables. So on our first cable coming from the consumer unit, which I will later identify as loop in, we have the neutral goes to the neutral, the live goes into the loop, and the earth goes to the earth. Then in order to create our switch live, we have a second cable, and that's this one here. We take the live from the loop round to your light switch. The earth we connect into the earth terminal. Then when your light switch is turned on, we then use this neutral cable to return the current back up to this line or live terminal. So our blue neutral cable is connected by there. So at our switch end of the cable, we connect the live into the top of the switch, we connect the neutral into the bottom of the switch. If we have a metal back box, we connect the earth into the small brass screw in the corner of the metal back box. If you've got a plastic back box, there's no need to connect it to anything. You can just tape the end and leave it inside the back box. Now because this is a switch live, we need to cover it with a brown piece of tape to indicate that there's a live current running through it when the switch is turned on. Then from our line or live, we then need to take another piece of cable represented by this, and in the ceiling rows this will be just 2 cables, a live and a neutral. And this cable will take the live down to your light bulb, and then the neutral will go back and connect into the neutral terminal. Now this cable will only be live when this switch is turned on. Hence it's called a switch live, and this can be used to turn your bulb on and off. What I'm going to show you in this video is how to replace this piece of cable or white flex which is in your existing ceiling rows with a piece of 1.5mm twin and earth, which will also have an earth in the cable which we can connect from the light fitting back up to the earth terminal, which will allow you to add the modern metal light fitting and earth it safely. This diagram only explains how to get the current to the room and add one light fitting. Now in a real example, you would usually have several lights throughout a house, and in order to get another light, you need to add another cable to this circuit which comes back out of the light fitting and into the next room with the next light. So let's take a look at my next diagram. So if we look at this diagram, I've now added the extra cable here. For the purpose of this video, I'll call this one the loop out. Exactly like the cable coming into the light fitting, you just add the neutral to the neutral block, the live to the loop, and the earth to the earth terminal. This then provides a current out of the room and into the next room with a light fitting. Just unscrew the ceiling rows. Okay, so when you look inside your ceiling rows, you can see that this piece of flex only has a live and a neutral, and there's no earth. And that's because there's no requirement for an earth for a plastic housing, because it's not a conductor. Now, what I'm going to show you now is how to do your wiring to get a cable that hangs down your ceiling with a live, a neutral and an earth. and this piece of flex will essentially be replaced with a length of 1.5mm twin and earth. And the switch live is this neutral blue cable here with a piece of brown tape over it to indicate that it's a switch live. Now unfortunately you may find that the previous electrician didn't bother to label this up. If you put the end of this screwdriver onto a live terminal, put your thumb on the end like that, and you should see when I remove my thumb on and off, your little light in the middle of that screwdriver turning on and off. That indicates there is a live current flowing through that cable. So in order to test for your switch live, just work your way through all the blue neutral cables until you find one that shows a live current running through it when your light switch is turned on. Put your electrical tester on the terminal with your light switch turned off, and your electrical tester should indicate that there is no current going through that cable. Then go back to the light switch, turn the light switch on, put your electrical tester back on the terminal, and if there's a light indicated on here which shows the presence of a current running through that cable, then you know that's your switch live. Just to be safe, go through and test all the other neutral cables and make sure there is no current flowing through them with the light switch turned on or off. If you can't identify the switch live, please get a professional to test your wiring to identify which one is the switch live. I know, as I've already established in this house, that this is the last light on the radial circuit. So we've actually only got two cables coming in here because there's no cable going back out to another light in the house. If there was another light in this building after this one, there would be another third cable going back out into the ceiling and off to the next room. With your screwdriver, just undo the screws in the terminal block, allowing the wires to hang from the ceiling. Undo the two screws through the ceiling rose and remove the plastic housing from the ceiling. To make this demonstration easier, I'm going to show you the practical example down on the table. The wires I use in my demonstration resemble exactly the wires hanging from the ceiling. I just want to show you a few useful connector blocks. I particularly like the WAGO 222 series and the 773 series. The 773 are push fit and the 222 click into place with these little lever switches. This is the WAGO box junction box. The 222 series and the 773 series of WAGO connector blocks can be used inside this junction box. This is the Ashley box made by HAGAR, and these have brass screw connections, and this basically resembles exactly what is inside a ceiling rose. We'll be reviewing these products in other videos. This is a bog standard plastic ceiling rose. Because these fittings are plastic, you don't actually need to earth this plastic piece itself because it's not a conductor. Most people want to replace these old plastic fittings with modern metal fittings like downlighters or fancy metal ceiling lights. These metal lights require an earth, so I'm now going to show you how to alter the wiring in your ceiling in order to accept a new metal light fitting. What we're trying to do is recreate the wiring setup in the original ceiling rose we have on the ceiling. So first up, the Ashley Hager box. I've labelled my wires just to make this a bit more clear while I show you the wiring setup. So loop in. So this would be the cable coming from your consumer unit. It would go up a wall into the ceiling to the room where you want your light fitting. We need to get the cable to the loop, to the earth, to the neutral. So our cable needs to be at least that long. So I'm going to use my CK wire strippers, and I'll review these in another video. Take the cable by there, squeeze your lever, and it splits your cable like that, and then just pull the cable off. You then need to cut these little bits out of the end of the box to allow your cables in and out. You can just do that using a knife. Once you've cut your slots out of the box, just push your cable through, leave it loose for now, and we'll tighten that up later. Cut your wires down so the live cable goes into there, the bare earth cable goes into there, and the neutral goes into there, but don't forget to sleeve your earth. Using the wire strippers, remove about 10mm off the end of the cable, like that. Do that for the live cable as well. It's often useful to remove one screw and twist this out the way while doing the wiring. You can then pull this back over the top at the end to secure the cable down. You need to buy a length of earth sheathing like this. Just cut it down to size with the pliers and put it over your bare earth cable. Just use a small electrical screwdriver to tighten up your terminals. Taking a closer look, you can see the copper goes through the terminal block and then you tighten these screws down hard and make sure that you don't leave any copper sticking out this side of the terminal block. Next cable I'm going to do is the one that runs the live to your light switch and allows you to have a switch live, turning your light on and off. Using the same method, strip your cables ready to go into the terminal blocks. A good way to work out the length of your cable in these connector blocks is to position your cable over the block, and then any excess hanging over the end just trim there, there and there. And then strip accordingly. The second cable can be placed over the first cable, as this box will accept 2 cables into each little section here, here and here. The disadvantage of this connector box is that it does get a bit tight for space when you start putting in a few cables. Now I've just labelled this one switch, so we know this cable is going to the switch. Now this one is slightly different. We need to connect the live into the loop terminal again. We need to connect the earth into the earth terminal again. This is where this one varies. Please refer back to the diagram I showed you earlier. With our switch cable, we're taking a live from the loop way through this cable into a switch. And that switch, when on, will produce a switch live. And we use this neutral cable to return the live back up to the light bulb. So, this neutral cable actually has to go over onto the live. Now whenever you do a switch live, you always have to either put a piece of live colour-coded sheath over the top, so in this instance we're using new cable, so it'll be brown, or you can use a little bit of brown insulation tape. So that's what we're going to do now. So it's easier to do this before you connect it up. So just take a little bit of insulation tape and wrap that around your cable. Now if you go into an existing fitting in your ceiling, if the previous electrician has done this properly, you should be able to identify the switch live by seeing this brown sheath or brown piece of insulation tape. Unfortunately, with some old fittings, electricians haven't bothered to do this, and you have to try and identify the switch live by doing some basic electrical testing before you carry on with the work. I'm just going to explain how the wire into the light switch works. On the connector block I just showed you, we use one cable for the switch, and I told you that the live runs out of the loop down to the switch which provides the permanent live, and this is the other end of that cable. And you can see then you've got your neutral cable, and the neutral is what becomes the switch live. And you can see there that we've got this brown bit of tape over there indicating that this is a switch live. And when this switch is turned on, the live current goes along this cable and returns back to the live on the ceiling rose. This then provides the switch live feed to your light bulb. This switch is turned off, this cable is no longer live, and your light turns off. Hence it's called a switch live. It can be either on or off. Where you have your earth cable, if this goes into a plastic mattress box, you can just put a piece of tape over the end. You don't really need the earth. If you've got a metal back box like this one, you need to connect your earth cable into the brass screw in the corner, which ensures that this metal back box is safely earthed. So the next bit I'm going to wire is effectively the white bit of flex cable you see hanging out of an old ceiling rose. Now on an old ceiling rose you'll find that there's a live and a neutral and no earth. So by effectively replacing the piece of white flex with a piece of 1.5mm twin and earth cable, like I'm using in this example, we'll get a live, a neutral and an earth coming out at the bottom of our light, and this can then be used to either connect it back up to a ceiling rose if required, or to a modern metal light fitting or downlighters. Again, strip and cut your cable, and so again, earth to the earth terminal, neutral to the neutral terminal, and the live to the live terminal. We now have a circuit going from our consumer unit to a light with a switch. Now if you were doing a series of lights, which is exactly what you would do in a house because you'd have a number of rooms and each room would require a light, we now need to go out to the loop again and create a circuit which would go to the next room. To do this we add one more cable. I've labelled this one loop out, and I'm going to place this one in this little hole by here. Strip and cut your cable to size. We put the live into the live. Now you'll find with the earth we're on our 4th earth cable, so this earth cable will need to share a terminal with another earth, and I'm just going to pop this one in the middle as it's the easiest one to go into. finally, don't forget to tighten up your clamps over your cables. You've got 2 cables of thickness coming out of the connector block. You're also going to have to cut the plastic out of this side as well to accommodate the cables. Once you're happy with your wiring, you close the lid over the cables and you can see now you've got space there for your cables. You just tighten that screw on the top and that securely fastens it all together. This will then slot up through the hole in your ceiling, and this is your cable to your light. If you ever need to take it back out again, you just pull gently on the cable and this will pull it through the hole, and you can open this back up and get access to your fittings again. So that's how to wire up the Hager J501 17th edition downlighter junction box. Whilst this is quite a handy bit of kit, I do find it a little bit time consuming and you are limited for space inside. It's particularly difficult when you're stood up on a ladder and you're trying to work in tight spaces. The next method I'm going to show you for your electrical wiring for your light fitting is using the WAGO 222 series. Now again, if we look at the original ceiling rows, if we think as each terminal block as a different cable, so you've got your neutral, you've got your loop, you've got your live, and you've got your earth. Now your live only ever requires 2 terminals, so I'm just using a double terminal block there. For the rest of them I'm going to use 3s, and I can just put 2 earth cables into one hole, no problem using these. So again, we're effectively recreating the ceiling rows. The advantage to using these is you only have to cut each cable to the same length. The other advantage to these is they come with a compatible junction box, so once we've done our wiring, these can just slot into those holes there and your cables are securely fixed into this rough section there. You can close the lid on this box and that can be safely secured in your ceiling. So using the gauge on the back of the connector block, just mark that with your thumb. Take your wire strippers, place them on the mark where your thumb was and strip your wire. And there's your cable cut to length. The great thing about being able to trim all the cables to the same length is when you use an automatic wire strippers like these, you don't have to do the cables separately. You can just use them all at once like that and it will strip all the cables at once. So using these connector blocks, if we say the loop in, and again this is the cable coming from your consumer unit into your light fitting, we'll click all these open. So once the levers are flipped up, we'll start off with the loop in, just push it in as far as you can and pull that switch down. This one here, we do the same again, and that's the neutral. And that's your earth. This is your switch cable. So we'll place the live there into this connector block. So this is effectively your loop. Place the earth into the earth connector block and lock that off. Don't forget on the switch, your blue neutral is returning back as your switch live. So before we connect up the switch live, always put a bit of brown tape on there, and that shows that this piece of cable is no longer a neutral and it is a switch live. We can now connect that to our twin terminal block. Now here's our light cable. So we'll now put this live cable into that connector block, and this takes the live current down towards your light fitting, and then the neutral comes back up and that can be connected into the neutral terminal block. The earth, like all the other earths, then needs to be connected back into the earth terminal block. So that is it, it's that simple. However, we've now got to add the loop out, which takes you on to the next light. To make this simple, I've called this loop out, and for this it's as simple as putting the live into your live connector block. We put the neutral into the spare neutral connector block, so we just put that second earth into the connector block and share it with the other earth, and that's fine because the 222 series of connector blocks can easily take 2 1.5mm cables in each one of these holes. And that's how simple it is using these WAGO 222 series connector blocks. What I love about these is you cut all the cables to the same length, you can strip all the cables to the same length, you don't need a screwdriver. If you ever want to test the cables in these, you just pop your electrical tester through the little hole in the top. You don't even need to undo the cables to test whether they're live or not. If you're intending to place these into the WAGO junction box, it's very simple. Just take your connectors and pop them into the holes like that. Then take your cable and push those through the slots. You will find with these boxes that the bottom end splays out slightly wider when the cables are in it, but the manufacturer's instructions do actually state that this is normal. Just give the box a good squeeze, it should all click into place. And there you have your secured junction box ready for your light fitting. In my view, the WAGO method is much easier than the HAGAR method with the J501. Won't go through the whole wiring method again, but if you want to use the 773 series of WAGO connectors, it's exactly the same principle, but they're push fit. And it's all you do with the push fit connectors, put your cable into the hole, push that in hard like that, and that's it. That's connected. It's as simple as that. Just pop all your cables into there like that. The same again with that one. And that's it. They're all in tight. You can see that like the 222, the push fit 773 connector will fit into this junction box in exactly the same way. If you ever need to release the cable from the 773 push fit, you just need to twist this round and pull and it'll come out. And then this is totally reusable, just like the 222 series. We now have our 3 cables coming into our junction box. We've got one cable coming out of the junction box, which is going to my light fitting, and this is the end of that cable, which now simply has the earth, the neutral and the live ready to fit into our light fitting. So taking a closer look inside the light fitting, the standard arrangement in these light fittings is a connector block with a live, a neutral. You've got a metal plate into the earth which is attached to the metal housing. So push your live into the live, the neutral into the neutral, and the earth into the earth. Take a screwdriver and tighten up the terminals. Securing your light to the ceiling, it's best to find a piece of wood or a joist in your ceiling to get a secure fitting. If you're unable to do this, use a plasterboard plug in your plasterboard and apply the screw into that. Always make sure your light is securely fastened to the ceiling. Take your junction box, push it back up through the hole. You can then feed your cable back into the ceiling. Secure your bracket back into the ceiling. In this case, I'm going into a wooden joist. If you want to run a series of downlighters in one room from the cable like this sticking out of the ceiling, then please watch my other video how to fit LED downlighters. With this particular light fitting, you push it over the screw on the bracket, rotate it round anti-clockwise to secure it on, and then tighten up the screw. And that's your light securely fitted to the ceiling and safely connected to the mains. Let's go and turn the power back on now and turn the light on. Hey presto! I'll be uploading more videos of domestic electrical circuits, so watch this space. For more DIY, how-to, household tips and product review, please watch my other videos and don't forget to subscribe. I've been POUSE around the house. Ta-ta, farewell!